For more, let's bring in the discussion Halie Soifer, Executive Director of the Jewish Democratic Council of America, joining us from Washington, D.C. And Halie, let's get right to the Iran issue, because that was a focus of comments here today. And of course, there is a clear difference. We remember the damage that this issue caused between the Democratic Party and the previous Israeli government, and Speaker Pelosi really trying to contain any fallout if there should be a revived nuclear agreement.
Well, Speaker Pelosi was unequivocal in her support of the U.S. Israel relationship and in not only Democrats' support for Israel's security and right to self-defense, but of that of the United States. From President Biden on down, we stand with Israel. And clearly that is also at hand when it comes to the threat posed by Iran. The U.S. and Israel both share a commitment to ensuring that Iran does not develop a nuclear weapon. And I am sure that Speaker Pelosi emphasized that in her conversations today in Jerusalem.
All right. But of course, perhaps some differences about how to achieve that goal. But I want to, Ellie touched on, of course, the Palestinian issue, which Speaker Pelosi did raise in Jerusalem today. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Our delegation is also here to reaffirm America's commitment to just and enduring two-state solution, one that enhances stability and security for Israel, Palestinians, and their neighbors. And our nation will continue to work with Israel toward this solution as we pave a path toward peace with your leadership.
Now, longstanding U.S. and Democratic view at odds with Prime Minister Bennett's views, not those of other members of his government, we should note, but certainly the Palestinian issue on some other elements, the so-called more progressive elements of the Democratic Party, are the cause of friction between Israel and certainly some members of the Democratic Party. Are Democrats going to be able to sort of thread that needle, or Speaker Pelosi, between these different camps within the party?
Well, support of a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not a Democratic position. This has been the position of the United States for decades, for consecutive U.S. administrations, Republican and Democratic administrations. So I wouldn't characterize that as partisan. And Speaker Pelosi's message today actually also was nonpartisan. She was emphasizing that the U.S.-Israel relationship should remain bipartisan. She underscored the bipartisan and bicameral support that exists within the United States for Israel. And despite the efforts of our last administration and yours to politicize this relationship, it remains a bipartisan issue. While her delegation was solely representative of Democrats, again, it shouldn't be viewed through that political lens. But if there was ever any doubt, she did a very good job today of emphasizing that extremely strong support exists within Israel, within the Democratic Party for Israel.
Right. Very briefly, the midterms coming up. Maybe that has something to do with the timing of the visit. Will the Democrats be able to hold on to the Jewish vote in the same percentages in the midterms as he's held in the presidential election?
Well, for decades, going back to the 70s when we actually started tracking these things, about 3/4 of the Jewish community has consistently supported Democrats. That's due to a wide range of issues, including the Democratic Party's longstanding support of Israel. We have no doubt that support will continue among Jewish voters for Democrats.
All right. Halie Soifer of the Jewish Democratic Council of America, thank you for joining us on The Rundown.